What are we going to do as a party actually going to spend money in communities of color?
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's a big issue. And do you guys have a strategic plan how you do that? Like, being biased, obviously, but we're the leading, media outlet for people coming to the state. And I haven't heard from anyone from the party. Hey, this is Henry Sanders, back for another episode of Real Talk, brought to you by our good friends at Park Bank. And we have a good friend here from the Democratic Party. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing so well. Thanks so much for having me on, Henry.
Yeah, how long have you been at the party?
So I was elected chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin last June. So it's been about 8 months now. And It is a wild ride. This is one of the most important years in the most important state in the whole country in the 2020 elections. And every person who lives here has a superpower for the next year that they get to vote, recruit other people to vote in an election that'll shape the future of every human life on this planet. It's a big deal.
How long is your term?
I serve 2 years, and then I can run for re-election. So through the 2020 election, and then the next spring, the members of the Democratic Party will decide whether I have done a good job or if they need someone else.
So you're already announcing right now. You're running. Ben has announced that he is running again.
I'm here to help turn the state blue, so whatever that takes.
Why? First of all, why do that? I mean, that's a huge job. The party's always been the party, so we sometimes go like this. And someone who's ran for office, that is a big job, and lots of personalities, lots of high demanding people. Why do that job?
So something I've found about myself in my life is that if I'm working on something where I don't feel like I'm going to have an impact on stuff that I care about, I wonder, what am I doing with my life? I find that more stressful than the stress of actually being in the fight. And so for me, it's a huge honor. I feel really lucky to be somewhere where when I wake up and read about exploding inequality and read about devastation through climate change and read about all the terrible things that are happening, I actually get to try to do something about it. And anyone who's volunteering, anyone who's working in politics, people working in journalism who are exposing injustice, it's a real privilege to be able to, spend your days fighting on the stuff that you care about, and that's what motivates me to get up in the morning and do this.
When you decided to do this job, did you go into it knowing that Wisconsin is like a key state in national politics, and historically the Republicans have really kind of dominated this state? I mean, the Walker administration. I mean, Trump won here last time. Did that motivate you, or is that a concern for you?
So I grew up here in Madison.
That's right. You went to West.
Went to West High.
Oh, that's too bad.
Where'd you go to high school?
East, of course.
East.
Yeah.
I'd put it in the top 3 Madison high schools. No problem.
Yeah, we're number 1. Everyone else is, wherever else everyone lands, it doesn't matter to me.
West, best. It's kind of a rhyme there. It's something I grew up. Anyway.
Yeah, anyways.
I grew up in a time, a very different political time in Madison. I mean, Wisconsin has always been a state that has both this strong tradition of innovation, of being the first state with public sector unions, the first state with workers' compensation, all these different things, and we're a state that has a legacy, some of the biggest racial disparities in any state in the country, some profound problems. But when I was growing up, there was at least some democracy where people could vote and try to have an impact. When I was, my first political memory is going to a Jesse Jackson rally when I was 7 with my mom.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being so inspired by that. When I was 11, my mom's best friend, my godmother, ran for Congress, a woman named Ada Deer.
Which we love Ada.
I love Ada. Yeah. So that was the first time I ever volunteered on a campaign. I stuffed envelopes for her, put up yard signs. She was the former head of the Menominee Nation, and the night of her primary, she won the primary and came out and said, "I've been waiting a long time to say this, me nominee," which was like the headline the next day. And as a kid, I just thought that was the greatest thing ever. I still do. And in high school, friends and I actually organized debates between state legislators about issues affecting young people. And this one state legislator kept winning the debates. And then she ran for Congress. And my friends and I all volunteered on her campaign. And that's when Tammy Baldwin was first elected to Congress. Mm-hmm. So we had this experience of, you can make something happen here. And when Walker came in, he just took an axe to democracy in the state from gerrymandering to try to prevent Democratic votes from turning into Democratic offices, to voter ID laws, intentional voter suppression of communities of color, of young people, just across the board, changing the way college students had to jump through hoops to be able to register to vote, to make it so that the idea that's inscribed in our Capitol, that the will of the people will be the law of the land, that wouldn't apply anymore. It would be the will of special interest mega donors to the Republican Party. And that just makes me furious. I mean, I think that Democrats can win in a fair fight. And the Republicans have been trying to rig the rules to benefit the people that they serve. And so for me, this is about 2020, but it's also about this longer fight to try to make this a system that is fair, that's inclusive of everybody, make it a state where the government is responsive to public concerns. And right now we have a governor who's trying to do that, lieutenant governor trying to do that, but the Republicans who run the state legislature are blocking fair maps, they're blocking Medicaid expansion. On issue after issue, they're preventing things that people in all communities, all races and ethnicities, everyone wants the same things. We want good schools, we want health care for everybody, we want roads we can drive on, we want a fair justice system. That's stuff that has universal support, and Republicans are blocking it because of who they serve.
So you mentioned something about early on how Wisconsin historically has been one of the most segregated. Well, yeah. I guess Milwaukee's one of the most segregated cities. One of the worst places to live for African Americans. Yeah. Most racial achievement gaps. What can the party do to address some of those issues, especially in a big election year when this is clearly on everyone's radar? And if you watch the State of the Union with President Trump, he specifically clearly was talking to black voters of why they should be interested in voting for him. How do you kind of counter his talking points at the same time in a state that's done so awful for black citizens? Yeah.
So to me, the most important thing is for Democrats, for volunteers, for candidates to go to folks where they are, for neighbors to knock on neighbors' doors, have conversations about what they care about, and elect people who represent their communities and can make a difference. And that means having candidates that reflect all the communities around the state, especially African American. We have more African American legislators now, I think, than any time in the history of the state, and they're all in one party. And as a party, we are constituted by the people who get involved and who get elected. And so I think that as party chair, it's my job to make sure that we're working to build the talent pipeline for jobs at all levels in the state party, to build our county parties, our neighborhood teams to reflect the diversity of the communities they represent, and to support. I mean, we're neutral in primaries, but when folks come out of the primary, we can work to lift them up and help them get elected to office, and then work to fight for them. You can see we have amazing African American state legislators, our lieutenant governor. Republicans go after them, and it's our job at the party to have people's back and to make sure that Republicans don't grind people out of public life. Mm-hmm. I think the other piece, if you look at what's happened in elections before, often I will own this. I wasn't party chair before, but Democrats often kind of show up in the last couple months and say, "Hey, it's time to vote. You got to vote." Yeah.
They do the black tour. They show up at the black church and go to a couple Urban League dinners.
Yeah.
And then vote for us because
October, time to show up.
Yeah, we're only showing town basically.
So that's not how we got to do it. It shouldn't be how we ever do it. Certainly not how we do it in 2020. And that means for us, knocking on doors year round, listening to people year round, getting involved in fights over issues, from criminal justice reform to supporting good schools to schools that are fair to all kids. All this is stuff that we should be showing up on 24/7, 365, Madison 365.
Oh, that was good.
Thank you very much.
Catchy.
I'll give you one example. So historically, a lot of the political staff have been people who look like me, and the question of why that is, there's a lot of different pieces of it. But one piece is often the political jobs, there have been unpaid internships. People get those who are in a position of privilege. Maybe they know somebody, they get in the door, and they move into the system. And they're wonderful people who come in that way, but it's not something that's available to everyone. So we're making internships paid. And we worked with a group called Organizing Corps 2020 to have paid training for field organizers. We had this group of 29 college students, primarily people of color from the Milwaukee area this summer. We just had another big cohort here in Madison this winter where folks are paid to go through the training. So they can actually, it can be their job to do the training. And you come out of it with a set of skills that makes you ready to join our staff. And we have folks on staff who've gone through that program right now. And it's a way of investing early. The other thing that happens is during that training, they mobilize volunteers and knock on doors. So we knocked last summer on the doors of 2% of the folks in Milwaukee. And that 20,000 doors in the space of 6 weeks. Wow. People would knock on the door, they'd open it up and say, is there an election coming up? Because no one ever comes here when there's not an election about to happen. Right. And it was like, no, we're just here to listen to what issues are of concern to you right now. And those conversations are so different than when Democrats are trying to sell people on something. This is about us listening so we can actually
help. Has there ever been a black chair for the Democratic Party? Or a person of color?
Martha, I can't remember.
Martha Love, maybe?
Martha Love, and she's
a legend. So if people don't know Martha's a legend in Milwaukee. She's a mother and to so many leaders in Milwaukee. So she's an icon.
She's on my administrative committee right now, and someone that I'm just so grateful for all of her leadership. Our vice chair right now, Felicia Martin, who ran on a ticket with me, is African American. She was the co-chair of Obama's re-election campaign in 2012 in Wisconsin, and organized. She launched 22 neighborhood teams that canvassed door to door in the 2008 race. She tells the story. She started canvassing for Barack Obama before he announced his campaign for president, and she made her own literature. And then once he announced, it was off to the races. And she was elected 2 years ago now to the Milwaukee County Board, is running for re-election this spring, and she and I are working hand in glove together. I mean, we have to have both the leadership team and all the way through have a party that represents all the folks that we're listening to, mobilizing, and fighting for.
Did you listen to the State of the Union? Did you listen to the president?
I have to confess, I watched some of it. I had my 8-year-old son was watching with me.
Yeah.
I didn't want him. I had to keep turning down the volume and explaining what he's saying is not true. That's not how it is. What he's saying about immigrants is this is not only offensive, it's also just false. Like it was kind of a challenging thing. But you're right, he's making an explicit pitch to African American voters and to Latino voters. Yeah. The thing is, if you look at his record, the stuff that he's actually doing, he's taking a hatchet to the supports that help people move into the middle class. And healthcare to me is the biggest example. He ran on this promise he was going to bring down prescription drug costs. And I don't know, I have asthma. I buy inhalers every so often. The cost of the copays that you pay for an inhaler have skyrocketed. Insulin, like all these things are through the roof because there are companies making a profit on it. And this is the impact of Trump's policies. It affects people of all races. There's a disproportionate impact on African American communities, and he says one thing and does the exact opposite. He's just in hock to the big insurance companies and drug companies. And for all of his talk, I mean, I don't know what your experience of this is. I'd love to hear what you think of this. It doesn't feel like he's actually delivering on anything that helps working people and doesn't line the pockets of his biggest donors.
That's a good question. I think, my guess, most people I talk to, people of color, I think, would say, well, at this point, what party are they really? Any party really doing anything for us, right? Like, is anyone really making change for us? And it's a sort of a pick between two necessary evils, right? So, who's really doing the work for us to help us move forward? And my guess is most blacks would say, Democratic Party's doing that. But my guess is also that the turnout's probably been lower usually now for black folks. So I think more people become more educated and more involved. I think also people become more disengaged. Like, guys, nothing's going to ever change. Yeah. I've been to Madison my whole life, and we still have the highest achievement gap, and we've had that for 20-some years. Yeah. So I think the question is, which party can actually really meaningfully do something about what they're trying to actually make real change in their lives. And I think that is what Obama did really well. And obviously I'm biased. I worked for the administration, et cetera, so I have to say that. But I think what Obama did really well was he talked to everyone's needs and he met them where they're at. Yeah. And I think everyone felt connected to him. Yeah. And everyone felt connected that he was their president and he was actually working on their behalf. And that'd be interesting what candidate does that from the Democratic side. And I think Trump is trying to do that.
Yeah.
And look, if he gets 14% African American blacks vote, it's a wrap. I mean,
That's true.
Between 10 to 14%, it's a game. It's over. I mean, but people don't talk about the Democratic Party often. We talk about all the other folks, but if you don't get black votes, it's a game. Game's over for the Democratic Party, especially black women.
Yeah.
And so if Trump is smart, he gets 14% of the African American vote. It's game over. It's a wrap. So it's interesting that he seemed to be more intentional what he was saying to the black community, and that shocked me. But it's smart. It's just politics, right?
He's canny.
It's politics.
I think he's America's biggest con man. I really do, and that's how he got where he is. That's how he had Trump University and cheated students. He wouldn't pay people who installed his golden carpets or whatever in his apartments, and that's how he's doing his politics too. Right. So he says one thing and then he does the other. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the African American turnout and who African Americans vote for, that could sway Wisconsin and it could sway the country, right, especially because of Wisconsin. And African American women are the backbone of the Democratic Party. They are the strongest constituency of any community for Democrats. But Democrats cannot take people's votes for granted.
Right.
They have to be earned. And that starts with meeting people where they are, asking them for their vote, and also asking them what they care about and actually fighting for those things. It's not enough to say we're better than the other party.
Right.
It has to be, we have to be a community that works.
I think it's generational too, right? So my parents, who went through the civil rights movement, they automatically defer to the Democratic Party. They've gone through the battles. The younger generation, I think they have a different perspective. I mean, we'll vote, but
and that's the irony of this is young people and the generations coming up now are the most diverse in American history. There are more young people than old people. If young people voted at the same rates as old people, young people would win every election. Right. And the stuff that anyone under 50 wakes up thinking about, that would be the forefront of politics. The fact is, there is an interest, especially among Republicans, in convincing people that they don't matter, that they don't count, that their vote won't have any impact, that what's the point? Their parties are equally bad. It's all rigged. Their message is that to try to depress voter turnout, to try to stop people from using the power that they have. And the truth is we have extraordinary power that terrifies them because, for all the money that they can spend, for all the sneaky tactics that they can do, if we come together and vote,
democracy actually works how it's supposed to.
Exactly.
Well, that's why we're talking about offline here about the Supreme Court race, right? Because the importance of that has to do with voters.
Yes. So one of the races that people never pay attention to normally is the state Supreme Court race. We have 10-year terms for the top judges in Wisconsin.
Is it that long?
It's a 10-year term. It lasts a long time. Wow. My 8-year-old will be going, finishing high school, I hope, by then. If
East, hopefully?
It's a West kid.
That's good. All right.
So we have a Supreme Court race this spring, and these are supposed to be nonpartisan races. Mm-hmm. But the guy who's running for re-election was appointed by Scott Walker, and Donald Trump just came to Milwaukee and announced that he's endorsing him. His name is Dan Kelly. He is Trump's guy, and he is basically a right-wing Republican operative. And one of the things that he's going to be able to rule on is cases affecting voting rights. So there's this right-wing group that did a lawsuit to try to purge 234,000 voters from the voting rolls. Yeah. 1 in 8 voters in Milwaukee are set to be purged in this thing. It is hugely disproportionately targeting.
Strategic.
Yeah, it's strategic. Mm-hmm. And you know exactly who it's targeting.
Yeah. Well, black folk.
It's black folk. It's black people and young people. Yeah. Republicans, because they're, they see people as a threat. So they want to take them off the voting rolls. Judge Dan Kelly, this guy, saw that this case was being petitioned up to the Supreme Court, and he recused himself for now and said it had to go to a lower court first because he knew that if he voted on this thing to purge all these voters in his own election, it would look bad enough that the backlash might hurt him in the election. What that means is that case is going to come right back to the Supreme Court after the election, after the Supreme Court election. And it was deadlocked. It was a tied vote. He might cast the deciding vote. And that means that if you think everyone should be able to vote, people shouldn't be kicked off the voting rolls because of some database that was being kept in secret, and we know it's inaccurate, and it's just a way of pushing people off the rolls. If you think people should be able to vote without interference, you've got to vote in the Supreme Court race this spring. It's April 7th, and it's going to be a hugely important race, both for 2020 and for the next decade.
Right, because April they vote. If he gets elected, he comes back, and they bring him back maybe September or something, and they decide at the last minute to take everyone off the rolls.
And this over and over, we can see. I mean, one of the things that Republicans did after Governor Evers and Mandela Barnes were elected, they did the lame duck session to try to strip powers away from the elected Democrats. And one of the powers they tried to strip away is the power to rethink how the voter ID rules work, because they have these laws that make it extra hard for people to vote. And Republicans knew that their whole strategy is to suppress the vote of black people and of young people, to try to stop people from being able to vote so that they can win, even though they don't have majority support.
Which I don't, I get it. I get why they would want to do that, but why would you want to win if the people are truly on for you, right? Like, why win a cheating? Like, win if you're going to win, right? But that's just
that's
me.
how I think about it. Yeah. No, I mean they want power. They want control.
Power. Yeah, I get it. Hey, everyone. I guess they can say everyone wants power one way or the other. I don't. My wife has the power in my life. So the power
sounds like my house.
The power I had is now gone. Between that and work for this organization, Rob has all the power here. So I'm really powerless. So that's been broken from me. So we have a big thing coming here in July, right? The Democratic convention's coming here. Big deal.
Huge deal.
Bigger and huge, right? Like people in Milwaukee are talking about this night and day. But we have some bad news. Like I was watching one of the shows, and they're talking about how they're concerned that 2 people were fired from. Now I know it wasn't part of the state party, which I know, but 2 people were fired, and kind of looks chaotic. Can you tell us what's kind of going on so people rest assured that things are going okay, we're going in the right direction?
Yeah. So convention is the biggest political event of the year, of the 4 years. It's a giant thing. The entire world will be watching. There'll be 20,000 reporters there, and 50,000 something other people, 15,000 volunteers. Giant operation. There's actually 2 different organizations that run it. There's something called the Convention Committee that organizes the stuff that actually happens in the Fiserv Forum, in the arena where it happens. That is rolling forward in beautiful shape. Then there's the host committee, which is responsible for all the stuff, all the logistics that happen outside. So making sure there's parking for everybody in hotels, all that kind of stuff. And in that group, there's a bunch of very, very talented people that are going to work there every day and making a ton of progress. But some employees just this weekend sent a letter to the board of the host committee and said that there was a toxic culture in the senior management. And they did a very rapid investigation. They fired the people who were leading the organization. And actually the person who's leading on an interim basis now is a Wisconsinite.
Yeah, Teresa, right?
Teresa Vilmain.
She's a legend in the Democratic Party.
Legend.
People know her, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful that once they saw a problem, they moved swiftly to address it, because the stakes on this are so big. And anyone who's met Teresa Vilmain can say she moves about 5 times as fast as regular people.
Yeah.
So I'm confident they're going to pull this together. And they're doing this in a way, which I'm really grateful for, where it is bringing in the community. They're working, especially focused on working with vendors, people providing services for just about everything, with a particular focus for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses that reflect the community. Their staff is, really talented, top-flight people from across the state.
Right.
So it is going to get back on track. It's going to be amazing. And anyone who wants to get involved, especially people here in Wisconsin, if you go to Milwaukee2020.com, you can sign up to volunteer. And again, they'll need 15,000 volunteers. You can be part of history just by signing up and going out and being part of it. I volunteered in the 2012 convention for Barack Obama's re-election, and it was an unforgettable experience. Yeah. It's something to do.
So one of the things I hear about in Milwaukee all the time is, and I don't know why just Milwaukee people, but they're always talking about, what are we going to do as a party actually going to spend money in communities of color,
yes.
right? I mean, that's a big issue. And do you guys have a strategic plan how you do that? Like, being biased, obviously, but we're the leading, media outlet for people coming to the state, and I haven't heard anyone from the party. So, like, do you guys have a plan of how you're going to outreach and touch people?
We absolutely, yes. So, and we had a great meeting the other day talking about your plans for the year and what it looks like. Yep. We're working on our budget right now. I'm intensively fundraising, and this is an prime area for investment for the party, both for this cycle for 2020 and for the long term.
Right.
And that both reflects how we're planning to build out our staff so that we have people dedicated specifically to outreach and throughout all of our departments, but also in terms of how we buy media and pay, like, what we sponsor, all that kind of stuff. That is part of our game plan. Right now we're in this sort of rapid ramp up moment as we build out the team before the Supreme Court race this spring. And you'll be hearing from us. Folks around the state will be hearing from us.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So is there things that we can be pushing, like, are there I know you're not part of the convention per se, but it's a big deal, national profile, coming to Wisconsin. Same time, we have some of the worst disparities in the country. So I think we want to be at our best, right? So do we have a plan to make sure, when I say we, I'm not saying me being part of the Democratic Party, I'm saying we as Wisconsin, as a state, and people of color. Right. Yeah. How do we make sure that we highlight people of color in ways that's, there's some bad things in Wisconsin, but there's also some really, really awesome stuff going on in Wisconsin for people of color. We have really a lot of talent here. Do you have any plans of highlighting that somehow? Is it a week? How long is the convention?
It's 4 days.
4 days.
So it'll be Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
This is from the first conversation I had with the convention committee leadership that figures out the programming inside the arena. Mm-hmm. This has been a core topic, that it has to be a convention that highlights and is inclusive of all the different communities around the state.
Yeah.
And that is, an essential success factor. So I know that that's something that they're planning to do.
Yeah.
The actual programming is a conversation between the convention committee and then whoever wins the nomination. So part of that is going to be, whichever Democrat emerges from the primary, they're going to be deciding. They get the final say on every speaker. They get the final say on all the videos that are shown, all that kind of stuff. So something that I'm doing is advocating to presidential campaigns about how to work in Wisconsin, and the fact that you have to speak to every community here. This is people's stereotype around the country of what a Wisconsinite looks like. This is a diverse state.
Really?
Yes.
And it's always funny to me how people say, when they think, especially people of color, they think Milwaukee, and I get it, but there's people of color in Madison.
Yeah.
There's people in Green Bay.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the third highest population among populations in the country.
Absolutely. We have tribal nations across the state. I mean, there's a lot of different types of folks here.
We're not just all farmers here, people. I mean, we're doing some good stuff. People are doing some really good stuff here. And so it's always interesting, people just talk about Milwaukee.
Yeah,
There's people of color across the state, who are influential people. So I just hope that they try to highlight the whole state, because they need the whole state to come out and vote, energize the whole state. I'm just hoping that they have a real game plan, selfishly, for what we do to make sure that we just highlight. Just an opportunity we might not get again for who knows?
No, and it's critical. Right? We got to seize this moment. I mean, the last time there was a Democratic convention anywhere in the Midwest outside of Chicago, which is a giant place, was 50 years ago.
Yeah,
more than that. And we got to make the most of this moment. The other thing that we're doing at the sort of role we're taking on at the Democratic Party of Wisconsin is to use the convention to run huge trainings for people that want to volunteer to help win the election. And so we're going to be running a massive training operation for anyone who wants to end the Donald Trump era and elect Democrats and turn the page and build a better future. If you go to Milwaukee during the convention, I want folks to go through this training and then commit to when it is that they're going to go through the context on their phone and reach out to people, knock on doors in their community. We're going to teach people how to do that, and help everyone make a plan to do it through the election, so that we come out of this convention shot like a rocket to win the election in the fall.
Are you busing people in at all?
To the convention?
Yeah.
I know I've spoken to the mayor of Madison, and they're talking about plans to have buses coming from Madison.
Yeah.
I think as far away as Green Bay, and there's lots of people are going to stay in Racine, Kenosha, all the different places within.
So much money be thrown in those districts. My gosh.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
It's wild.
Who else is up in November?
So in Wisconsin, we don't have a governor's race. We don't have a Senate race. It's a presidential election and then congressional races. So, we have 3 Democrats in Congress.
Is Pocan up?
Pocan's up. All the members of Congress are up. So Pocan, Gwen Moore, and Ron Kind. And then we have great Democrats challenging Republicans, even though those districts are gerrymandered and sort of built to help Republicans get reelected. I think we have strong Democratic challengers, which is great. Then there's state legislative races. So we have this plan for the year that spells out WISCO, which is win the Supreme Court election. Mm-hmm. Use that as a dress rehearsal for the fall, so we find out what works and what's going wrong. The I in WISCO is to inspire, recruit, and train thousands of volunteers at the National Convention. The S in WISCO is to stop Republicans from getting a supermajority in the state legislature. And Republicans' plan is, if they get 3 more seats in the Assembly, 3 more seats in the state Senate, they'll be able to override our governor, and they'll be able to lock in unfair maps for another decade. And that's what they're trying to do. They're raising millions of dollars from special interests to do that. And we have to stop them. So there's a few places where there are state legislative districts that are battlegrounds, and we're going to make absolutely sure that we go through the finish line in those places. The C in WISCO is cancel Trump's second inaugural. Naturally. This is just pure coincidence. WISCO is the acronym. So we got to stop Trump, and we got to do that by building, reaching out, showing up in every community around the state, and then making sure that once we have a nominee, a presidential campaign, that they actually work with us and listen to the voices of Wisconsinites. And that doesn't always happen. And so part of my job is talking to the presidential campaigns about what we're doing and about the need to actually come here and see how it works. And
they would have to. I mean, they should listen. They lost her last time, so they have to humble themselves someone and say, hey, because Trump can win Wisconsin again.
It is like
we're like a purple state. I mean, he could win. He can win Wisconsin again. I mean, it'll be interesting. It's going to be a fight.
It's going to be a fight.
It's going to be a really fight.
We've been under 1 percentage point in 3 of the last 5 presidential elections here.
Turnout's going to be key. Everyone has to be engaged.
Yep.
Yeah. So before we go, do you have anything else you want to say to our viewers, and specifically to people of color who are sitting at home and say, no one's really for me. There's not really a candidate of color coming through. There's what do you tell that person to engage, Republican, Democrat, whatever, but what do you tell that person to engage, why this election is important for them to engage in, how they should vote?
Yeah. So the last letter in the WISCO plan speaks to your question. It's the O in WISCO is organized for the long term. I want to be honest with people. This is a long-term fight. Frankly, the fighting for justice is a never-ending fight. And even if we win, even when we win, the change won't come overnight. I mean, I remember dancing in the street after President Obama was elected. It was one of the most amazing nights. And President Obama had this message over and over that change is hard. Nothing comes easy. And you've got to fight every day to make the difference. I think we've got to bear in mind that it's simultaneously the stakes are so big this year in terms of whether we want to live in a democracy where every vote counts, whether we think everyone has the right to health care, whether it should just be a way to make the biggest possible profits for drug companies. All that's at stake in this election. But also, even if we win, the battle continues. And on things like as close to home as making our schools work for every kid, that's stuff that takes training, it takes constant work. And I want us as the Democratic Party to be a place where people can come together to do that work, knowing that there's no silver bullet in business, in politics, and in anything in life. It's going to take work in election after election after election. If you think about mass incarceration, this is something where to get the real criminal justice reform that we need in this state, I think we're going to have to win majorities in the state legislature and have the governorship. So it's a state where we can pass a bill with Democratic support, have the governor sign it, and go into law. That is not on the table in 2020 because the maps are so gerrymandered. That means building in a way that is grounded in every community so that people know that they have a party that's fighting for them and they have a place where they can go to get involved in that fight, shape the agenda through 2020, through 2022, however long it takes. So I want to tell people that at once, I can't promise the sun, moon, and the stars, and I want to be honest about that, but I also want people to know that there's a community of folks, a diverse community of people that are fighting to try to make a change, and we know how urgent that change is, and this is a year when every Wisconsinite has a superpower. Like, people around the country are obsessed with Wisconsin. People around the world are obsessed with Wisconsin.
Like Wakanda forever, superpower.
Yeah, exactly. Wisconsin is Wakanda in 2020. And
that should be a T-shirt, right?
Wisconsin's Wakanda.
Yeah. I like it. We do. I want a percentage of that sale, though.
Well, maybe
we talk offline about that.
Yeah, that sounds good. We got to use that. We got to use that superpower, and it'll be something that we can tell our grandchildren about what we did here.
Yeah. Well, thanks, and thanks for coming on, and good luck to you. That's a lot of work going on. You're not gonna get any sleep. I mean, you're gonna be not sleeping at all to probably January. And if we win, I mean, my gosh, right? So you have a
it's gonna be pretty
year.
wild.
Yeah.
I have 3 little kids, so I'm not getting any sleep anyway.
Oh my gosh. So yes, but good luck to you. I've been in that world. And thank you for all you're doing, and keep working to get people of color out and engaged. I think that's going to be key for you on a lot of different levels.
Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thanks for another episode of Real Talk, and we'll see you next time.